In today's episode, we will talk about the Kingdom of Montenegro. From 1910 to 1918, the mountainous country on the Adriatic coast proclaimed itself a kingdom. Today, it is known as Montenegro. On August 28, 1910, Prince Nikola I proclaimed himself king in the small nation of Montenegro, elevating it from a principality to a sovereign monarchy. On August 28, 1910, on the 50th anniversary of his rule, Nicholas I declared himself King of Montenegro. This was not an act of aggression, but rather a way for the small nation to assert its identity and sovereignty. To understand this, it's essential to remember that Montenegro is surrounded by much larger and more powerful countries like Austria-Hungary, Russia, Serbia, and the Ottoman Empire. Being a small country in this part of the world meant being in a constant struggle for independence. King Nicholas I died in exile in France in 1921 without ever seeing his country again. So when Nicholas I proclaimed himself king, he was doing so to send a message to the world that Montenegro was an independent country with its own identity, culture, and language. It represented centuries of struggle for independence, religious freedom, and national identity. Although it lasted only 8 years, the legacy of this kingdom continues to resonate today. The announcement was more than just a symbolic change. It demonstrated how Montenegro wanted to establish itself as a modern European state. Nicholas I was well aware that his country was still far behind other European nations. World War I broke out in 1914, and 4 years later, Montenegro found itself occupied by Austrian forces. King Nicholas I and his family were forced to flee to France in 1916. They lived out the remainder of the war in exile. In order to modernize, it needed significant changes in infrastructure, industry, and education. At this assembly, they voted to end the reign of King Nicholas I and unite Montenegro with Serbia. This decision was highly controversial and has been a source of political debate ever since. Those who supported the union argued that it was necessary to create a greater Serbia to protect the interests of the Serbian people. However, many Montenegrins saw this move as a way for Serbia to annex Montenegro. There was even an attempt to restore independence known as the Christmas Uprising of 1919, but it was crushed by Serbian forces. With the proclamation of the kingdom, Nicholas I began to implement reforms that aimed to bring Montenegro into the 20th century. One of the most important aspects of the kingdom's legacy is the introduction of a new constitution. This constitution established the framework for a constitutional monarchy, outlining the rights and freedoms of the citizens and establishing a parliament. It also defined the powers of the king and set the rules for governing the country. Under his rule, Montenegro continued to grow and modernize. It reorganized the army, created a postal service and a public school system, and began to construct roads and railroads. When the Berlin Congress met in 1878, Montenegro was able to gain international recognition, which was key to ending its international isolation. Additionally, Montenegro played a significant role in the Balkan wars between 1912 and 1913, fighting alongside Serbia, Greece, and Bulgaria against the Ottoman Empire. During this time, Montenegro was able to expand its territory to include areas such as northern Albania.
However,
this expansion did not last long, as Montenegro had to give up some of these territories under pressure from the international community. For centuries, the region known as Montenegro was part of the Ottoman Empire. In the early 1800s, Montenegro started to become a nation-state due to 3 main things: the growth of a shared culture, the existence of natural borders, and the emergence of national leaders known as vladikas, who combined the titles of prince and bishop. With the help of Russia, Montenegro won several wars against the Ottoman Empire, which allowed it to double its territory. By 1876, Montenegro was internationally recognized as a sovereign state. However, it was still a theocracy ruled by a prince-bishop. That all changed in 1881, when the title of prince was separated from the bishopric, marking the beginning of a secular state. In 1860, Prince Nicholas I took the throne and ruled for 50 years. But Montenegro's desire for independence and self-determination didn't end there. In fact, it was at this point that it reached its peak. However, declaring itself a kingdom was not enough for Montenegro. Its king wanted to bring about political, economic, and social changes. Fortunately, Montenegro's journey to modernization and nation-building was cut short. In October 1918, Montenegro's political leaders, many of whom were influenced by Serbia, convened a meeting in Podgorica. After the end of World War I, Montenegro ceased to exist as an independent state. The Kingdom of Montenegro was a pivotal moment in the history of this small Balkan nation. Thank you for watching this episode. If you liked it, please leave a like.